Hi, welcome to Little Mental Sky, the place where we discuss all things related to Black women and mental health. My name is Aaliyah Naomi, and I'm a freelance journalist, podcast producer, and blogger. Thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of establishing media that validates the Black female experience and also promotes radical vulnerability. And I'm talking about like movies, TV shows, podcasts, blogs, TikToks, all those forms of media that can enable Black women to share their stories and feel heard. To do that, I will be sitting down with the host of Deep Within, a podcast that encourages listeners to become emotionally aware through art, while providing resources and a safe space that taps into the distinct needs of Black women experiencing life across multiple spectrums. Along with that, I'll be recapping their podcast screening that took place on August 28th. But before we get into that, I sat down with Dr. Natalie Watson Singleton, Associate Professor at Spelman College and affiliate faculty member at Emory University.
So I'm Dr. Natalie Watson Singleton. I'm an assistant or an associate professor, actually. I just recently got tenure at Spelman College. I'm also an affiliate faculty member with Emory's Department of Psychiatry. And in my role, I mostly work with the NIA Project, which is a program that provides free mental health services to Black women who've experienced intimate partner violence and who've attempted suicide in the last year. And I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist.
And I also sat down with licensed professional counselor, Alana Joseph.
Prior to starting private practice, I worked as a community counselor for about 7 years. So community counseling, I worked as a mental health counselor.
To understand why certain stigmas surrounding psychological care exist within the Black female community.
So then I think about just, it's hard enough being a Black woman in America, right? Facing stigma due to your race, stigma to your gender. The last thing we also want to add on top of it is being stigmatized because of our mental health status, right? We already have to deal with racism and sexism. Do I want to take on additional questioning about who I am and my competencies and whether or not I can complete a task? I think within the Black community, again, I think there are multiple reasons why stigma exists. I remember doing a project when I was in graduate school and I was asking Black women about their interests in using mental health services. And I remember a woman saying, I don't need therapy. My grandma told me to pray about it and take a nap. Take it to Jesus and take a nap. And I think for a lot of us, we were socialized in our communities to pray, to emphasize our spirituality. And we know that prayer and spirituality and our religious practices are such an important part of our healing, our coping, our community practices. But prayer and therapy can go side by side.
I think that some of it is could be linked to culture, cultural beliefs. So I grew up in the church setting. My dad is an ordained minister, and the spiritual aspect of life is very strong within our culture with Black and brown people. I've learned, and I can remember learning at a very young age that is the place to go when you have challenges with your feelings. You go to church.
So we know that Black women are underutilizing mental health services, and the underutilization of mental health services is a global issue. So it doesn't just impact Black people, but it disproportionately impacts us. So about, I think, 20 to 25% of the population uses mental health services, and the numbers are about 15 to 16% for Black people in general. And then, although I'm not aware of specific numbers for Black women, what we do know is they're less likely to use services compared to women of other races, even when they have insurance. So oftentimes I'll hear people talk about, well, maybe they're not using mental health services due to classism, right? So due to issues with insurance, not having adequate insurance coverage, perhaps not having adequate transportation. And although that's part of the story, what we see is that even when Black women have insurance, they're still underutilizing mental health services.
The Black woman within our culture is, perceived as a very strong, very much in control, many times leaders of the family. And so I think that the expectation is for Black women to just sort of figure it out, right?
I also know that sometimes we have misperceptions about what mental health symptoms are. So I remember talking to women and hearing them say that, going to therapy or seeking services are only for people who have schizophrenia. And so we kind of treat mental health services as this special thing that only a select few people need if they have a psychotic disorder. And so people feeling like, well, if I seek therapy, folks are going to think that there's something wrong with me. They can throw that even stigmatizing language around of being crazy. And so people try to distance themselves from that and therefore distance themselves from mental health services.
So I think that sometimes within our culture, mental health challenges are sort of swept under the rug, or even I've had clients say that they feel embarrassed because they're feeling depressed or anxious, which is very unfortunate, or that they might even get in trouble, right? Or that not seen as strong. I think specifically within the female gender within our community, with very, very strong expectations for women. And so I think that culture plays a big, big part of it. But I feel that part of my job is to help that change, to ensure that those that look like me know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help. That is actually a sign of strength, not keeping it inside or masking it or sweeping it under the rug. Could I add something to that? Because I know part of your question was, what are some of the, what could be some of the consequences of that? Stress, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, generational patterns where it continues. So those are some of my concerns about the future, if it doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
And it really starts with stress. Stress is very powerful, and it can certainly graduate to other real mental health issues.
And I couldn't agree more. It just speaks to the urgent need for a larger network of information and resources by way of various media platforms like Deep Within that emphasize the importance of Black women's participation in mental health care. Which brings me to Peters Street Station in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a night dedicated to raising mental health awareness, curated by podcast host Anika Siobhan Taylor, along with co-host Anisha Cooper. A diverse group of creatives and entrepreneurs were in attendance, not only to celebrate the launch of the Mental Health Podcast, but also to celebrate the community that inspired it. with performances from local artists, including Neek Siobhan herself.
Thank you all for bringing this up. Yeah, y'all I smoke every day. Yeah, I'm trying to smoke every day. Yeah. On my dome, I'ma keep on going. Blessings keep on flowing. Find me on my grind stuff and calls. That's how I'm rolling.
The night concluded with an insightful discussion ranging in topics from mental health destigmatization to defining personal boundaries, which prompted my curiosity about the role media platforms like this podcast play in the effectiveness of mental health care amongst Black women. So I met up with the host of Deep Within at a local brewery to discuss their inspiration for the podcast and what they hope their listeners will gain from it. Take a look.
I am Anika, Neek Siobhan Taylor. I definitely go by Neek if you know me on a more cool, chill level. But because I do see myself as a professional, I like to go by a professional name too. So like Anika, Neek Siobhan Taylor, whichever one you want to call. Nothing less or bruh. We can say bruh.
I'm Anisha Cooper. I don't have a cool stage name yet, so it's just Anisha Cooper.
I am a hip-hop lyricist. I am songwriter. I am now newly podcast co-host, creator, coordinator. I'm just out here doing my thing, trying to become the person I know I am to be.
Yes, I am mostly known as a trauma therapist. I'm working my way into the creative scene more. I've always been creative, but I'm just now getting out there, putting my art out here. I'm a mom. That's a whole job in and of itself. I work right now. I do a couple part-time gigs with mental health, intervention. On the side, I also have my mental health practice that has been up and running. I can't believe it's been 5-6 years now that I've been running that. So,
did you add that you were a podcast host?
Oh, yeah, I did. I'm a podcast host, yes, and content creator.
Honestly, I'm passionate about pursuing dreams because we got dreams, and most of those dreams are a bit of our purpose. So I'm passionate about just living out my purpose. To wrap that all up, very passionate about that.
I was approached by Neek to start a podcast. We met on Tinder, funny enough, and she, on our very first date, since you want me to tell the facts, she came over and I'm playing the guitar, I'm vibing, and she's like, listen, I'm trying to do a podcast. And I honestly, at the time, I wasn't taking podcasting really seriously. I wanted to do more speaking and things like that. It just felt like it was this trendy thing, and I wasn't sure how I was going to carve out a space for myself in that. So I thought about it, but then I was like, nah, everybody's doing that. And what made me honestly say yes, though, to it was, one, seeing someone that was serious, that seemed organized, that came to me with a plan. And then the second piece of it was how many affirmations before that came by way of friends or family or people saying I want to hear more of what you have to say, because I wanted to give people that look like us, who have the same orientation, queer Black folks especially. I don't think there's a lot of space for us to do that healing work, and I was like, this is a great medium to bring to multiple audiences and create that vibe.
From honestly just being alone, feeling isolated, feeling forgotten about, and because it happened in the pandemic, so obviously everybody was kind of feeling some kind of alone and shut out. And at the time I was just, I was alone, but I was I wish I could just go to the studio I wish I could just get something off my chest because it was a lot that I was holding in, like a lot of us. So it just got to the point, when I was writing the song Random Thoughts, I was listening to one that's deep within, like, I said that in the song, deep within, okay. I think I want to talk more about it because that song was like the most therapeutic for me. So I just put it out there. I talked to a couple people about, podcasts and things like that. And then, when I did finally come across her, I was like, wow, this might be a perfect opportunity, regardless of how far it goes romantically. I think this would be a great thing that we both can collaborate on and talk about. I'm gonna start with that. I know that's all. Let me start because I know she's gonna go into it. But Black women, I think we are one of those. We are very low in the totem pole when it comes to any kind of care. Like, we've been told for so many generations to just hold it and keep moving. And a lot of us have not come out on the positive side by doing so. Me taking myself and knowing who I am and be so bluntly honest that I do have issues with anger. I do have issues with feeling claustrophobic and things like that. So, and I had to think about, like, why do you feel like that? So that's when the work started to come. That's when the healing started to happen. And again, I wanted to talk about that because I was like, somebody else is going through this, and some other Black girl is going through this, a Black woman is going through this, and maybe them seeing me, somebody that's not on this high totem pole yet, really like walk through that journey with them. So that's what it was important for me, and I'm hoping it's important for everybody else.
We come last in so much, and we've carried generation after generation. We've literally nannied other people's kids, breastfed other people's kids, raised other people's kids that didn't look like us, and our own, and all other descendants of us on this whole landscape that we had, where we weren't cared for, but we were expected to constantly pour into other people and their children and their generation. So generation after generation, we've internalized this idea, I think, that we don't need a lot of help because we're strong and independent. And I want to focus on the fact that we're so human that, we deserve a space to feel freely and not be ostracized because of that. And that's what I think Deep Within is offering. There's 2 Black women on the screen. We're going to invite more Black folks of all genders into the space just to give us permission to feel
and to relate.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about, relate, connection, to just feel like we can be heard. Finally.
I think when we humanize people, it gives other people an opportunity to, one, be exposed to another culture's journey, and also just by catharsis, being able to say, I can feel too then. If this group of people that I've associated with being the strong, we don't need a lot, can start to speak freely about this stuff, I can too. And I think it also will diversify how people see Black people in general. That we aren't just one stroke of the brush. There's Blackness in anything. It originated from Blackness. And if we, like, the fact that people don't understand, like, rock and roll is Black, blues is Black. We can go in anything and it'll originate in Blackness, but we don't get that type of love and credit. And I think this is a platform that will diversify that for a lot of people who are only exposed to one type of Blackness.
And also, want to add to that is that they can, again, learn the history of our trauma, and not to, like, explicitly point fingers, but just to understand, like, we've been holding on to this for so long, to the point, like, we're at this era in time where these particular Black people or Black women are now learning to heal from that.
Find some type of community that they're comfortable with first. Like, even when I talk to clients, I'll say, have you tried like a Facebook group or a social media, some type of group to start? And then they can kind of get their feet wet without the same type of commitment that you would have in an in-person space. So when you're asking for help, I'm like, you can join these spaces in Facebook groups and get some type of community support just to see, is this a vibe? Do I want to go see these people in person? And then also I encourage people to just listen to their loved ones, like their true loved ones, not people that pretend to care about you, but you got to show up in a certain way to be cared about, but people that they actually vibe with, and say, start small, like even the vulnerability of saying, I'm not at my best, and see what the response is. See if you're ready to go deeper into that. So I tell people vulnerability doesn't have to look like, in the advice that you're seeking, like it doesn't have to look like this grandiose, like I'm pouring my heart out to you. It could just be like, hey, I'm not okay today. Can we start there and see if you're getting the type of love and support that you desire? But one thing I will say is that training for people who actually are invested in it has to happen. And that's from everybody, from the doorman to the janitor to the receptionist. Everyone needs more training on how to interact with diverse people. That's why I said, don't just watch. If you're truly about this, then why isn't your staff trained to work with diverse individuals? Why do I walk into a hospital and only see white faces on your media or on your walls? Why do I only hear music by white musicians on this intercom? Even the fact that we have to present a certain way, like I hate that I automatically change my voice when I get on a certain call. Like, no, this is not my culture, and I shouldn't be deemed less than or unintelligent or ghetto because I talk how I talk or move like I move. This is not a white world.
Tell me about your reasoning behind why you're incorporating art, self-healing through art. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. What art does is has an opportunity to literally get it out of your body.
Yeah.
So whether it's the visual or something tangible that you can hold, if it's right, whatever it is, the externalization piece is so important, especially for Black bodies, because we have a history of holding this trauma. This is why Black mothers talk to their kids a certain way. This is why Black fathers move the way they do. For centuries, the way that we've been raised was helpful from a slave mentality. And so now we have an opportunity to help people change the way that they see themselves, talk with themselves, and externalize that. We don't have to hold it in our bodies anymore. We have permission to release it. And that's what art is. I released it. I let it go.
For generation after generation, Black women have long held traumas that were inflicted on them because of their classification of race and gender. But what does it look like when we start to let that go?
I worked with a woman years ago, and she's a Black woman, and she was probably one of the first. She's probably one of the first adult clients that I'd ever worked with, because again, most of my experience has been working with children and youth, and I think working with her and having that background of working with children, we were able to unpack a lot of trauma that happened to her family. The norm was don't talk about it, right? And she experienced sexual abuse, physical abuse. I mean, it just was heartbreaking to hear her story. But the norm, again, was don't talk about it, or be strong and move on, right? And that's what she did before therapy. Once she completed therapy, she began telling her story to other women and sharing her story. And she's actually now a poet,
I am fortunate to where the majority of clients in my private practice are Black women. And I hear from them week after week after week about how just appreciative they are to have spaces designed specifically for them. I don't take it for granted, or I don't want us to underestimate how powerful it is to experience validation, especially when we exist in societies that often invalidate our experiences, that often question our competencies, that often stereotype us in these really harmful and negative ways, that really downplay and dismiss our contributions. To have spaces where the opposite happens, where we're validated, where we're affirmed, where we're celebrated, it's so necessary.
Well, that is my video. All right, well, that is the video. Thank you all so much. Thank you to everybody who was involved. The ladies at Deep Within. Thank you to Anisha Cooper. Thank you to Anika Siobhan Taylor for agreeing to speak with me and for allowing me into your space. You all can follow them, follow their podcast on Instagram at We Go Deep Within. And you can find them on their personal Instagrams as well, listed below. And thank you to Dr. Natalie Watson Singleton and Miss Alana Joseph for providing their expert opinions in today's video. And thank you for watching. Be sure to share this video with someone if you liked it. And also, thanks for watching. I'm Aaliyah Naomi. This is Little Mental Sky. Bye.